Joining us now is Republican Congressman Don Bacon of Nebraska. Sir, thank you so much for being with us. We are looking at the clock. Is the government going to shut down at midnight here?
95% odds is yes. I hope it's short term, though. I do believe because we have a clean CR that goes 7 weeks. And normally you get a shutdown when a majority party tries to put in some political things in the CR or poison pills, you could call it. We didn't in this case. So I think the Democrats will come around in a week or so. And I also think they don't realize that when you have a shutdown, you give power to the president, you give power to the executive branch. And I've seen this on the other, I was standing in the other shoes in the previous 4 years, and we always knew that Joe Biden would take actions that that we wouldn't agree with during a shutdown. So it always made us resistant about doing a shutdown. But I think this will be a short-term CR. I sure hope it is. I hope cooler heads prevail. There are some things that we need to negotiate. I think we should do that during the appropriations bills process. I think many Republicans would like to see some middle ground here on the ACA tax credit. So, I see fertile ground for us getting together in the appropriations process.
Yeah, those tax subsidies, those ACA subsidies that expire at the end of the year that I know a lot of people will be watching because it could really increase their costs. As you're talking about your concerns about what could happen if the Trump administration obviously does have power here with what it would do in a shutdown, what do you think that looks like?
Well, we saw this in previous administrations where the executive branch will take actions that make it more challenging for the minority party that's forcing the shutdown. And so there will be, these threats of layoffs or people being riffed, as we call it, is a real possibility. I think the president's and his team's gonna play hardball here. By the way, he's not the only one who's done this. It's happened previously. And that's why would warn my Democratic
not the
colleagues,
rifts, right? Not the threat of
shutdown,
rifts. That hasn't been used previously.
No, but there's been other threats that were, that we took personally as a Republican Party. And I would just think you're handing power over to the president when you do a shutdown, and you could only get his approval to open the government back up. So they're giving him a bigger vote in this process. And this is what I've learned being in the House with a Democrat president, right? So I think some of my Democrat colleagues haven't been through this, and they're going to see that this is not a very fulfilling situation to be in.
Yeah, we certainly do look to the past as we are waiting to see what happens here. I do want to talk to you about what we saw in Quantico earlier today. You saw Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth telling senior military officials that his job has been to determine which leaders are incapable of embracing the War Department and executive new lawful orders. He said that if the words "I'm speaking today" are making your heart sink, then you should do the honorable thing and resign. You are a retired brigadier general in the Air Force. You're a member of the Armed Services Committee. Do you have any concerns about maybe not just that sentence, but his message today and his bringing all of these general and flag officers together as he did?
The first thing that I noted was everything he said has been stated already. So I didn't really hear anything new since he's been confirmed. This has been his main message. And most of us applaud the focus on combat, that we're supposed to be warriors, that our main goal is to win wars and deter wars. And I think most of us embrace that. But his message has been the same since he's been confirmed. I think a lot of this could have been done virtually. I think most of the generals get this and the admirals. The one area of concern that I have had is they seem to have a suspicious mind or a doubting spirit about the flag officers. The generals and admirals are not your enemy. They seem to hold them accountable for decisions that the Biden team made, Secretary Austin made under the previous administration on DEI policies and other policies that they don't like. But the generals and admirals, they were following lawful orders, and yet they're holding a lot of these generals and admirals accountable for these decisions that stem from Biden. Now, I've personally told Secretary of Defense Hegseth, I use the old term, It says because none of this passed the House yet or Congress. But I personally told him that you're the new leadership. You have the opportunity to tell them what your expectations are, and the generals and admirals will follow your lawful orders. And they don't have to be suspicious. They don't have to be, doubting. And this, I would say, rampant firing of senior leaders, whose really their only fault was following the directions of the previous administration, I find very troublesome. Some of these guys served 35 years, nearing 40 years. They were patriots. They served in combat, and they want to do well by the military and by our country. And some of these guys were treated, I think, very rudely and unprofessionally in how they were handled. And you're talking about 10 4-star generals and some 3-star generals here, quite a bit. And none of them were actually given a reason. Just say, hey, see ya, thanks for serving. That's how you treat someone who serves their country for 35 years. And, you reap what you sow. And I hope, but I haven't liked what I've seen when it comes to how we've treated the military leadership. For example,
can I ask? I want to ask you. I hear your concern about Cyber Command, but I do want to ask you something because I'm very curious to hear your opinion on this. Listening to Pete Hegseth today, you could kind of get the impression that there's all these women serving in combat roles for which they're unqualified to be serving in. He's evolved since he became Defense Secretary. He previously said before he had the job that he thought women should not be in combat. As you're aware, many women serve in combat positions. Do you have concerns about the kind of message that some of his rhetoric today sends to women in the armed forces?
Well, today was a little more nuanced than what I've heard in the past. But I knew the chief of naval operations. She was a great leader and a great lady military professional, and she was fired for no reason. And again, just back to my original point on this, one thing he did say today that I find better, there are a lot of jobs that are not, quote, combat. You're not in the SEALs, you're not in Delta Force, you're not a search and rescue. And it's all right to have separate standards. That's what I got from his message today. But if you're going to be in the Delta Force or be a Ranger or be, in the SEALs, that there should be, a single combat standard. I think most people actually agree with this. But, before this, to say that everybody should have the same standard for all MOSs or all kinds of specialties, I think was going too far. So I heard a little more accurate, nuanced position today. If you're an air traffic controller working in a tower, that's not the same as being a SEAL or Delta Force. And we could have some female standards versus male standards. That's what I grew up with, by the way. But I have worked with so many great women. And my second boss ever, in 1987, she was a lady. And I've had many female bosses, and they've performed wonderfully in the Air Force. I think about Jennifer Short. She's a 3-star general that was fired for no reason, again, by this administration. A combat leader. I would have served with her anywhere, anytime, any place. She deserved better.
Congressman Don Bacon, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.